Yeah, so we're about to go into some pretty heavy content, or it could get heavy. And we were just talking about how we were going to discuss today and what we were going to discuss. And Storm brought it to my attention that we should do a blunt trigger warning because the topic is working well in trauma. So we might choose to share something that, or one of our own traumas that might remind viewers of their own. So you know, please make sure that you're feeling good about watching the show. If there's something that does trigger you, please feel free to reach out to your networks. If you need to extend your networks to our network, our email is ccandseith@gmail.com. We're not always going to be able to respond right away. So if you're feeling extremely triggered, please go to your network or, call emergency services.
I guess a good example for me would be I worked the Shingwalk Residential School Center for about 4 years, and there had been several times when people were in crisis or in situations that reminded me of my own family situations, or I'd unexpectedly be digitizing photos and I'd see photos of relatives or people identified as relatives, and that would be kind of stressful and something that I'd have to kind of take home with me. So kind of like also too, just like working in history, I deal with a lot of dehumanizing language. I deal with a lot of like records of violence. I do a lot of legal research as well, and a lot of that can be a bit traumatic. And I think that the way that I kind of like work through it while working is, yeah, like Jess said, I just throw myself in and I work really, really hard and I try to ignore it and push it down and bury it and tell myself that, like, you have a master's degree, you're a professional, you need to get going, like you need to do this, or like you can block it out, or like and then like 4 or 5 days later you come home and have a crying fit, and it's just like working on it and like telling people like at work, like I'm not being rude, I'm not being short, I'm not like disappearing because I want to, it's just because like I need the space to kind of like think about and process what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing. And I'm trying to be a better communicator, but I think that for me is like a big part of trauma, is like really trying to communicate, like, that I'm in the moment of feeling a certain way and that I just need the space and the time to kind of like collect myself and come back to neutral, or to the way that I normally am.
I so I feel like when we're talking about like the trauma self, the professional self, like it's I think it's okay. Like, I'm not sure whether maybe that is a disassociation of some sort. Cause like my line of work, like trauma all around, trauma like in emails, trauma in phone calls, trauma, like it's all coming at me. And like, there's absolutely no way that I can separate that. And I like, so for me, one of my goals that I set was, like I actually set a goal to not drink. And I knew that like I drank to deal with the trauma because that's what it is when you don't have access to mental health care. It's an alternative, and so is coffee, and so is tea. It's just less frowned upon. And so one of the goals that I set was to stop drinking. And then the reason I set that goal, because like I looked at all the leaders around me and all the leaders that I looked up to and all the leaders that, you know, I'm not saying that leaders who do drink are not people that I don't look up to, but the people that like were running $1 billion companies, and like, you know, maybe I may not run $1 billion company one day, but I looked at them and, you know, they were like running every day and they didn't drink and they didn't do all these things. And I'm like, okay, you know, if there's one thing that I can remove from my life is this trauma response. And I found that was really, really helpful because I used it to mask trauma and then to also to fake, I guess, like to deal with the trauma I was, but I wasn't actually dealing with it. I was just sort of numbing it. And I think that has really helped improve my life, improve my sleep, improve my anxiety, improve my everything else. And I know that's really hard because some people can't do that, and some people, and I don't mean it to like to judge others, because totally it is a trauma response and it is a tool to overcome things. But I think like if we just what I call like an audit of the life, so like what in your life helps you manage trauma, and if it's good, then you know keep more of that in your life. And then if you think it's good, but it sort of doesn't help your life in other areas, like alcohol was good, I enjoyed wine, but it didn't help with my sleep. So I knew that I needed to sleep more and sleep better. So like that sort of helped me with like stuff like I am who I am, and I don't think that I can separate the trauma self and the professional self. Like it's going to be one and the same.
I think that's a really good practice too, to kind of you know, that, like you had said, the life audit. That's a really interesting concept, and it's you know, which can be very challenging too. And you definitely have to approach a life audit with a very clear and open mind, and you know, and a lot of heartfelt thought, you know, because it could just necessarily be that like maybe there's some things in your life that you hold very dearly that are actually not helping at all, you know, and in people in those scenarios, you know, it can be really that can be a trauma in and of itself sometimes, to have to admit to oneself that like, hey, this person in my life is toxic and I need to let them go. Oh, but they're like you know, this uncle I held dear and like taught me everything I know, or they're, you know, it's this whatever it is, maybe it's a bottle, or maybe it's you know, a cigarette, or whatever it is, you know, maybe it's caffeine, who knows. But you know, like to pull away from that, you know, sometimes that can be really, really challenging. And I think in situations like that, it's really good to have, you know, access to your networks, and, you know, make sure that communication is there. You know, as Skylee was saying, the communication is key. And I'm only just recently just kind of starting to get back into modes of communication that I've kind of put aside for a long time, thinking, oh, well, you know, if I talk about this too much, it's going to look this way, or I'm going to come off as this or whatever. It's like, well, no, you know, communicating is good. That's what we have as human beings, to be able to talk to each other and to help work through each other's problems. You know, you're oftentimes you can be doing somebody else a great service by just communicating to them what it is that you are having trouble with, and it helps to put, you know, like some troubles they may be having into context, and maybe in a place where they're willing to share and communicate too. And that back and forth communication can help heal, you know?
Dang. Maybe that is a trauma response. The trauma self and the professional self. You're like, no, you got to be your own one strong self and work on that. Oh, that, eh?
Yeah.
Wow. Has an epiphany on camera. No, I'm just kidding.